If you watch my other videos, you'll see that I've started to document the process of preparing for a script. So I've recorded 2 videos in short form of me learning my lines while getting on with chores. And now I will begin to analyze the script somewhat. So, exterior. So this scene is from Big Fish. So, location is exterior, under a tree, dusk. So the question for me is, okay, it's at night, at dusk, sunset. It's under a tree, but where is the tree? Is it a tree in the back of a garden, in somebody's home? Is it in the middle of the Amazon rainforest? Is it, a dangerous place? Is it a safe place? Is it somewhere to chill out? I'm not sure. Okay, so all of that will make a difference to how you act. All right, so Edward sits with Norther Winslow. Right, I'm not sure who Edward is, and I'm not sure who Norther Winslow is at the moment. I've only seen about 8 minutes of Big Fish, and I haven't really paid attention to names yet. So Edward is male, Norther Winslow. I'm not sure of the gender. I've not heard of the name Norther before. Is it a male? Probably a male, but could it be a female? Might be. I need to Google that up. I need to do more research who they are. I don't know what the relationship is between these two. Are they strangers? Are they old friends? Are they lovers? Is one the parent of another? No idea. The fireflies are out. Okay, so it's definitely dusk. Thousands of them. Okay. All right. How would that affect the scene? That detail there. How will that affect the acting? Okay. Norther hands him a notebook. Okay. All right. What's the relationship between Norther and his notebook or her notebook? I'm going to assume it's a he for now. So Norther hands him. Yeah, it's a he. It is a he. Norther hands him his notebook. Yeah, Norther is he. Okay, great. So what's the relationship between Norther and the notebook? Is the notebook something kept away like a museum piece, or is it something that Norther holds constantly, like a companion, like we do with our mobile phones? Okay, so that's an interesting... What's the relationship between Norther and this prop? Long term. Need to know this. Norther Winslow, I've been working on this poem for 12 years. Okay? So when Norther is telling Edward this line, why is he telling Edward? Is he trying to impress him? Is he trying to justify himself with this line? This line could be delivered in so many different ways, depending on what the context is. Where have they come from? What the relationship is to each other? This scene is just a snapshot, midway of something. So where did they come from? What happened just before this? What is the relationship? Why is Norther saying this line to Edward? Why is he saying, I've been working on this poem? So if he, for example, is trying to show off, it'd be like, I've been working on this poem for 12 years. And if Norther, on the other hand, is trying to, justify himself or something like that, so it could be like, how would it be? I've been working on this poem for 12 years. It all changes depending on a lot of the information that you need for the context of what is going on here. So Edward goes, really? So is Edward impressed? Like, really? Is Edward wanting to know more? Like, really? Tell me more. Or is Edward being sarcastic? Really? Okay, all depends. All changes depending on a lot of things. Okay. Norther then says, there's a lot of... All right, here we go. There's a lot of expectation. I don't want to disappoint my fans. Sounds like he's showing off. To me, it sounds like, from that line, it sounds like he's showing off. Okay, so a beat. And there's a gap. And I'm guessing Edward is now reading the poem, or looking at the note, reading the poem, looking at the notebook. And then he says, it's only 3 lines long. Okay? And then Norther grabs the notebook back. So I'm guessing Edward is saying it in a way that is mocking Norther, perhaps. It's only 3 lines long. It's only 3 lines long. It's only 3 lines long. It could be said in so many different ways, depending on what you're trying to achieve through that line. What is the character's objective, and what tactic is the character is currently trying to use in achieving that objective through this particular line. Okay, so Norther grabs his notebook back. He's obviously very defensive about it. Doesn't like that comment. Oh, can use a mouse. Okay. Norther, this is why you don't show work in progress. Okay, so now why has Norther just said this is why you don't show your work in progress? Why have they said that? Is that because earlier Edward insisted on seeing the work in progress and Norther didn't want to, and we've now got to a point in the scene where Norther has given in to Edward's demands and handed the workbook over? Is that why he handed the workbook over? Or is it simply Norther now changing tact and going from trying to show off to now make an excuse as to why, after 12 years of work, this poem only has 3 lines? Okay, so this is why the context of the scene is really important, to be aware of the context. Okay, Edward says, Norther, do you ever regret not making it to Paris? Okay, so what's going on here? Why is Edward saying that? How long has Edward known Norther? You know, what does Edward know about Norther and Paris? What was Norther going to do in regards to Paris? And why did Norther not go to Paris? Without that information, one cannot authentically deliver the script. You can't act the script properly without all of the information. And this is why I like to do my research. If I have the script available, I'll read the script. I've got enough time for doing that. If I have a filmed version of the scene, I'll watch the filmed version of the scene and the whole, not just the scene, the whole movie or the whole series or episode or whatever, because all of this information is vitally important to give a truthful performance that is believable, that you believe as well, so that your reactions while acting are authentic to what's going on in the scene, in context. So Norther says, I can't imagine any place better than here. How long has Norther been in that place? Is Norther a lonely person, a hermit, who only writes poems and just stays in his hut, a little bit like I do? You know, why is Norther saying that? Is Norther saying, well, there's no place better than here? Or, you know, what's going on in this exchange? Why is Edward saying this to Norther, and why is Norther replying with that? And then Edward then says, you're a poet. You ought to be able to, and maybe if you'd seen more, you could. So now Edward is saying, well, you're a poet. As a poet, you should be able to imagine a place better than here. It's your job as a poet. You're a creative writer. And maybe if you'd seen more, you could. And so if you'd seen more with your own eyes, then that could fire your imagination to be able to imagine more. So And then Norther doesn't answer, just goes back to his notebook. So that last bit there suggests that, you know, maybe the notebook is Norther's constant companion. Maybe Norther constantly walks around with that notebook. Now the question is, again, with this prop, what is Norther using? In this instance, in this moment, he's using the notebook as a distraction to kind of go into himself and not respond to Edward's taunt, right? But normally, what does Norther use the notebook for? Does he use it as a distraction to not look at the reality around him? Or does Norther use the notebook as like a camera to capture the reality around him through his poetry? All of this information you can probably find by reading the entire script or watching the entire show, and so that you can see this scene in context. This is why it's so important, I believe, as an actor, that you do your research. You don't just learn your lines for this scene. You don't just analyze the scene out of context, but you need to do your research about the scene outside of context, so that you can give a very truthful performance that is real and authentic. Without that research, you can miss the mark as to what the author is trying to convey. Now, for an acting class, it might be that you go into class and you put all that work of analysing the script and doing the background research, etc., but the teacher, the coach, might not use the script in that authentic way. The teacher might use the script just as a tool where you can improvise a scene based on it, or something else. Or the teacher might say, okay, this is the scenario, completely different to what's actually in the movie, right? He or she might get you to play around with, okay, this is a scenario, you're in the Amazon, you're on your first date, you know, blah, 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 act the scene out now. Or you could be like, one's the father, one's the child, and they haven't met in years, and they're now meeting for the first time when the child's turned 18 or whatever, or obviously older in this case, because they've been writing this poem for 12 years. But, you know, this is the child trying to impress the father, and the father trying to give the child guidance. You know, the teacher who's training you could use this script in many different ways. And as the actor, as a student, your job is not to only, I feel anyway, is not to only do all the homework, all the analysis that I'm doing before going into class, but when the teacher says, do it this way, you respond to that. You absorb like a sponge and you do it how they've asked. Because that is also part of our training, that not only do we need to be able to prepare and do the homework before we get to a set, but we need to be able to work with the director and work with the director's vision and do as the director directs. And if that means changing what you've done up until that point, then so be it. That's our job. And a good actor will be able to do that. Okay, so I think that's enough for this video. I hope it was useful.